So here's a crazy story. We've got a student arrested, accused of making a nuclear threat unless Utah wins. This happened last Saturday, and the craziest, most shocking thing of this entire story, the person that made the threat was not a frat boy. It was a 21-year-old female. We finally found a female college football fan. I'm just kidding, but it says, University of Utah student was arrested Wednesday after police said she threatened to detonate a nuclear reactor. She was booked into the county jail for investigation of making a threat of terrorism. On Saturday, Utah hosted San Diego State. The woman posted, quote, threats of violence on a messaging app before the game, stating that, quote, if the football team did not win the game, she was going to detonate the nuclear reactor that is located in the University of Utah, causing a mass destruction. Police noted that the student does have knowledge, she has knowledge of the nuclear reactor and is aware of where it's located and attends class in the same building where the nuclear reactor is housed. So that is a crazy story. Again, I think we hear this once or twice a year where some crazy Tennessee frat boy, whatever, pert fan threatens to do something crazy if their team loses. It's just such a weird situation. A 21-year-old female, and she picks the Utah game against San Diego State where they were 21-point favorites. Very random, but I just thought I would share that. Again, we get a few of these a year with these kids making some type of threats. Apparently, this one a little bit more significant considering where she knows the nuclear reactor actually is located. I don't know, this person, maybe mental illness. I would highly doubt it's just the idea of it just being a diehard woman fan who is just so crazy about Utah, she would blow up the university if the team lost to San Diego State. I think there's some sort of mental issue going on with that situation. I wanted to share this because this is, in my opinion, a little bit disturbing, and this is one of the reasons we're getting the 12-team playoff. You can see updated college football playoff teams' chance of making the playoffs. This is according to the ESPN FPI. It has Georgia at basically an 80% chance. If Georgia wins out in the regular season, they're a lock to make the playoff, even if they lose to Bama in the SEC championship. It's got Alabama at basically a 3/4 chance, 76% chance. They're in a very, very similar position to where if they win out, we really could have used Alabama losing to Texas because they would have no margin for error. They lose to Georgia, they're out. They lose another regular season game, they're out. But both Georgia and Alabama having 0 losses, could you imagine they go into the SEC championship game both undefeated? That would be, both of them would be guaranteed to make the playoffs, and then you've got Ohio State at roughly a 67% chance with Clemson at 36%. If those end up being the 4 teams, this is what the casual people say about the lack of parity in college football. Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, those same 4 teams. This is why we need an expanded playoff. Give more teams a chance to have, play some really meaningful football games and make more games down the stretch matter when you have the playoff. Now some of these New Year's 6 games where we see kids sitting out, they become more meaningful. Other odds, you've got Michigan at 31% chance. I think the reason it's very tough to judge Michigan based on their analytics right now because they've faced literally no one. But it's an interesting scenario. Let's say Michigan wins every game, but they lose to Ohio State, and your one loss is on the road to Ohio State, and let's say Ohio State goes unbeaten, so Ohio State's ranked like 1st or 2nd. Michigan wins every game except the game at Ohio State on the road, so they have one loss. against a team that is undefeated. Where would Michigan fall? Would they make the playoffs? Could we see a team like USC? They've still got very tough matchups at Utah. They've got a game this week against Oregon State. You have Oklahoma sitting there as well. I think it's going to be tough for Oklahoma because to me, the Big 12 has at least a solid enough team pool to where I feel like Oklahoma's going to slip up 1 week. There's, to me, like Iowa State, Baylor, Texas, Quinn Ewers should be back for that Oklahoma game. I see Oklahoma slipping up, and then I don't see any way Texas makes it, especially with one loss already. Penn State is there. I mean, we'll see. Tennessee, not this year, in my opinion. No chance. Ole Miss, no way. Utah sitting at 2%, mainly because of that week 1 loss. That week 1 loss killed Utah. They could theoretically win out and make it, but it's extremely tough with their schedule. They have Oregon on the road. They've got USC, of course, and then they'd have to win the Pac-12 championship. How about this stat? Iowa, the team that we basically meme for having the worst offense in college football history, they've had more red zone trips than Texas A&M. And I know Texas A&M has a better offense than Iowa. It's basically impossible not to. But this just shows, it represents how bad Texas A&M's offense is, how badly Texas A&M needs a legitimate quarterback. Maybe it's the 5-star true freshman. Maybe it's someone else. All I know, with the amount of money the Texas A&M boosters have spent on this roster, on all those true freshmen, if they deem that they need a superstar quarterback going into next season, I think there's going to be a crazy situation that plays out similarly to the Jordan Addison to USC situation, where, guys, basically all that was, Jordan Addison was bought by USC. He entered the transfer portal, in my opinion and my speculation, because USC said, listen, you're making this, you've got NIL deals with Pittsburgh, come here, we'll give you 10 times, 12 times the amount of money to play for a year under Lincoln Riley with Caleb Williams in a much better offense, and they take the chance. And it's like, if you're Texas A&M and you're looking at the situation where all of these true freshmen are going to be sophomores or redshirt freshmen, the defense is going to be loaded next year as long as you don't have a mass exodus via the transfer portal, that the boosters are going to spend an absurd amount on trying to convince a quarterback of a smaller school, or maybe someone, that's not in a great situation. The person I think of, someone like Tyler Van Dyke. I know it's big speculation, but I'm just saying they're going to try and get someone to transfer, in my opinion, similar to the Jordan Addison to USC situation. We've got Washington State selling out their game against Oregon. So that is great news, and certainly this game 100% should be sold out. This is Washington State's chance to make a statement in 2022 and really be relevant for the first time since Gardner Minshew. They kind of rhymed a little bit. They are 6.5-point underdogs, I believe, at this point in this game. Oregon, very weird team. They get destroyed week 1. They destroy BYU week 3. They're kind of highly regarded right now, but it's very interesting. Both Oregon State and Washington State have major home games this weekend. Could you imagine both those teams win? I think USC is going to beat Oregon State, but I do think Washington State has a chance to beat Oregon at home. This game is 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock local time, which kind of takes a little bit of the sting out of it, a 1 o'clock start. I don't love that, and it is on Fox, I believe, so that'll be interesting to follow that game. Quinn Ewers injury update, the Texas star QB. I don't know, are we calling Quinn Ewers a star QB yet? I mean, certainly we know he's the number 1 overall prospect and everything like that, but it says he will travel and dress for week 4 at Texas A&M, but people in the comments were saying he dressed last week for their game against UTSA. He's still not ready. But guys, Quinn Ewers, the original thought he wasn't going to be ready until the second week of October. It looks like possibly next week Ewers will be back. And certainly they're going to want him back for that Oklahoma rivalry game. Texas, this is a big game for Texas on the road at Texas Tech. Texas Tech isn't a great team, but they're definitely a team where, you've got to play. You've got to play. It's not like they're a pushover. And then we've got one more final thing. North Carolina discussed a potential ACC Pac-12 super conference per a recent report. We've heard about so many of these different super conferences, mergers, things like that. Guys, what we're seeing within college football right now is the other three Power 5 conferences understanding there are two super conferences with all the movement we've seen, and it's eat or be eaten. All of these conferences are trying to stay alive. They're trying to make deals. You have the ACC with the horrible grant of rights. That's going to have to get resolved in some way or another. Whether it gets renegotiated or not, I don't know. But there's going to have to be something that happens with all the money we've seen that gets funneled into the SEC and the Big Ten. Teams like Clemson, teams like North Carolina are not going to be happy being tied down to this deal through 2036. And I do think if worst comes to worst, they will try and get out of the grant of rights. Best case scenario for the ACC, ESPN renegotiates it and they're able to keep everyone. Worst case is they keep it as is, and we see the Big Ten sign a massive TV deal where teams are getting over $100 million per year. Same thing with the SEC, and the ACC is in trouble at that point. But right now, guys, the idea of a super conference between the Pac-12 and the ACC, in my opinion, I think the article said there's no chance of it happening. Any sort of merger between the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac-12, any merger of any of those three conferences into each other, it just isn't viable, in my opinion. You would lose too much TV revenue because if you merge two conferences and make a 20-team super conference, the teams are going to end up diluting the conference and you're going to get less TV money per team. So it wouldn't make sense for even Pac-12 teams to get into some sort of ACC super conference, in my opinion. Of course, the biggest players right now, Washington, Oregon, I still expect those two teams will end up in the Big Ten. That's what they're waiting for. The Big Ten's West Wing, which is kind of the end game, getting the 4 windows and then possibly renegotiating the TV deal to make even more money by having that 4th window. If you can add more West teams, it also mitigates the travel issues. You could make your own Western pod with USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, possibly Stanford and California as well if they wanted to get 6 teams. But guys, we will see what happens. I just wanted to talk about that, the crazy bomb threat, the games this weekend, kind of an under the radar weekend. I think those 2 Pac-12 games are going to be very interesting. Washington State and Oregon State, both at home. Of course, there's no major top 10 matchup. You've got the SEC matchup, the A&M Arkansas game. That is neutral site. I think that's going to be a lower scoring game. A lot of casual fans probably are not going to be interested. Really, any A&M game seems like it's going to be lower scoring at this point. It's kind of like Iowa. You know what? I mean, I read the stat. Iowa has been in the red zone more times than A&M. Actually, something I saw, the Iowa Rutgers over-under, I saw it was at 34 even. 34 even. I don't know what it's at now. Maybe it got bet back up. It is crazy. The Iowa Rutgers over-under right around 34 for a college football game. Unbelievable. And it might actually hit. I mean, if it's 17-14, the under hits. And it could be. Rutgers just played a 17-14 game last week against Temple. So we could see it. Also, I saw Temple faces UMass, and they're only like minus 340 on the money line. How bad is Temple football this year? You're only minus 340 on the money line against UMass. Oh, man. It's like I want to bet Temple money line in a parlay, but I'm worried about it. But guys, that's just kind of a update there for Week 4 college football. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.